Let me tell you about one of the strangest military units in World War II. It was called the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, but everyone who knew about it, and very few people did, called it the Ghost Army. And here's the crazy thing. This wasn't a fighting unit. This was 1,100 men, artists, designers, actors, sound engineers, even a fashion designer, whose job was to pretend to be an entire army, with inflatable tanks, radio plays, and pure theatrical deception. And they were so good at it that they fooled the Germans over and over again, saving thousands of American lives in the process. The story starts in early 1944. The Allies are preparing for D-Day, the invasion of France. But there's a problem. Even after landing in Normandy, they're going to be outnumbered. The Germans have more troops, more tanks, more artillery, so American military planners come up with an idea that sounds absolutely insane. What if we create a fake army? An army that looks real, sounds real, broadcasts real radio signals, but is actually just a few hundred guys with rubber tanks and sound effects? The man who champions this idea is a guy named Ralph Ingersoll. He's a journalist in civilian life, now working for the US Army. And he's been studying British deception operations in North Africa, where the British used dummy tanks and fake radio traffic to confuse Rommel's Afrika Korps. Ingersoll thinks, we can do this better, we can do this bigger. So in January 1944, the US Army creates the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. It's classified at the highest level, top secret, need to know only. The unit is divided into 4 main sections, and each one has a specific job in creating this illusion. First, there's the 603rd Camouflage Engineers. These are the guys who handle the visual deception, the fake tanks, the dummy artillery, the inflatable everything. And get this, they recruit heavily from art schools. The Army literally goes to places like the Pratt Institute in New York, the Philadelphia Museum, School of Art, even fashion design schools, looking for people who understand visual illusion, perspective, shadow, and light. One of the men recruited is a guy named Bill Blass. Yes, that Bill Blass, who became one of America's most famous fashion designers after the war. In 1944, he's 22 years old, and he's using his understanding of fabric and structure to help design inflatable tanks that look real from 100 yards away. Another recruit is Ellsworth Kelly, who'll become one of America's most celebrated abstract artists. In 1944, he's painting fake unit insignia on Jeeps and practicing camouflage techniques. The second section is the 3,132nd Signal Service Company Special. These are the sonic deception guys. Their job is to make noise, specifically, to make the noise of an entire armored division moving into position. They have special equipment, massive speakers mounted on half tracks that can project sound up to 15 miles away. And they have a library of recordings, tanks moving, trucks driving, equipment being loaded, soldiers shouting orders, all recorded on wire recorders, which is cutting-edge technology in 1944. The Sonic Deception team practices in Tennessee and New Jersey before shipping out. They set up their speakers in the woods and blast recordings of tank movements, seeing how far away you can hear them, testing whether they sound realistic. Local residents complain about the noise. The Army tells them it's classified training. Nobody knows what they're really preparing for. The third section is the Signal Company Special. These guys handle radio deception. Their job is to send fake radio transmissions that German intelligence will intercept. They mimic the radio patterns of real American units, the timing of transmissions, the encryption methods, even the individual fist of radio operators. Every radio operator has a unique way of keying Morse code, like a fingerprint. The Ghost Army radio operators study real operators and learn to copy their style perfectly. They create entirely fictional units on the radio. The Germans listening in hear what sounds like the 2nd Armored Division setting up here or the 6th Armored Division moving there. But these units are actually somewhere else entirely. Or sometimes they don't exist at all, they're pure fiction. And the 4th section is the most theatrical, the special effects section. These guys are basically method actors. They go into towns near the front lines wearing the shoulder patches of whatever unit they're pretending to be. They go to bars, they talk loudly about their fake unit, they get drunk and accidentally mention where they're supposedly going next. They make sure German spies and French collaborators overhear them. They even have fake generals, not impersonating real generals, that would be illegal, but creating fictional senior officers who visit the front complete with the required number of stars on their vehicles, the proper motorcade, motorcycle escorts, the whole show. In May 1944, the entire Ghost Army, all 1,100 men, ships out to England. They're still training, still practicing. They know D-Day is coming, but they don't know when. They practice inflating their rubber tanks in the dark. It takes 4 men about 15 minutes to inflate one Sherman tank. These things are incredible. Up close, they're obviously fake, just rubberized canvas stretched over inflatable tubes. But from 100 yards away, especially with the right paint job and shadows, they look completely real. From the air, which is how German reconnaissance planes would see them, they're perfect. The Ghost Army also has inflatable artillery pieces, inflatable jeeps, even inflatable airplanes. They have wooden mock-ups for things that can't be inflated. Everything is designed to be lightweight, portable, and quick to deploy. D-Day happens on June 6, 1944. The Ghost Army isn't directly involved, they're still in England. But in the weeks after D-Day, as Allied forces establish a foothold in France, the Ghost Army finally gets their orders: cross the English Channel and prepare for operations. Their first real mission is called Operation Elephant. It's June 1944, and the Allies are trying to capture the port of Brest in Brittany. The 2nd Armored Division is being moved to a different sector, but the Allies don't want the Germans to know, so the Ghost Army moves in and pretends to BE the 2nd Armored Division. They set up their inflatable tanks in the exact positions the real 2nd Armored had occupied. They broadcast radio traffic matching the 2nd Armored's patterns. Their sonic deception teams play recordings of tank maintenance and movement at night. Their special effects guys go into local towns wearing 2nd Armored Division patches. And it works. German intelligence reports indicate they believe the 2nd Armored Division is still in that sector. The Germans keep their forces positioned to counter the 2nd Armored, which is actually 200 kilometers away doing something completely different. Here's where it gets really interesting. The Ghost Army doesn't just set up and wait. They perform these deceptions under incredibly dangerous conditions. They're often within a few miles of German lines, sometimes within artillery range. They're setting up fake equipment while real German reconnaissance planes fly overhead. They're broadcasting fake radio signals that could give away their position to German direction-finding equipment. And here's the thing, they don't tell you when you join, you can't defend yourself normally. If Germans attack your fake tank position, you can't call in real artillery support because that would reveal you're not a real tank unit. You have to evacuate and leave your rubber tanks behind. You're basically bait, hoping the Germans don't realize you're bait until the real American units are in position. On several occasions, the Ghost Army is nearly overrun. In one operation near Luxembourg, German patrols get close enough to the inflatable tanks that the Ghost Army soldiers have to quickly deflate everything and evacuate in the middle of the night. They lose some of their equipment, but they escape. One of the Ghost Army's most successful operations happens in September 1944. It's called Operation Brest, the real U.S. 6th Armored Division is being secretly moved south to participate in Operation Market Garden. That's the failed operation where the Allies tried to capture bridges in the Netherlands. But the Allies don't want the Germans to know the 6th Armored is moving. So the Ghost Army, again, steps in and pretends to BE the 6th Armored Division. They set up hundreds of inflatable tanks in the exact positions the 6th Armored had occupied. They broadcast the 6th Armored's radio patterns. Their sonic guys play tank recordings every night. Their special effects section goes into Paris, which had just been liberated, wearing 6th Armored patches and getting drunk in bars, talking about how their division is still up near Brest. German intelligence completely falls for it. They report the 6th Armored Division as still being near Brest. Meanwhile, the real 6th Armored is hundreds of miles away, about to participate in Market Garden. The Ghost Army's operations get more sophisticated as the war goes on. By late 1944, they're coordinating multiple types of deception simultaneously. Visual deception with the inflatable tanks, sonic deception with the speakers, radio deception with fake transmissions, and atmospheric deception with the special effects guys in the towns. They even add new elements. They start painting fake tire tracks in the mud leading to and from their inflatable tank positions. They have soldiers walk around the fake positions to create footpaths that look real from aerial reconnaissance. They hang laundry near the fake positions because real soldiers do laundry. They create fake garbage dumps with empty ration cans. Every detail matters. One Ghost Army soldier later recalled, "We were creating theater. We were set designers building a stage. but the audience was the German Air Force, and if they figured out it was a set, people died. The Ghost Army's most important operation comes in March 1945. The war is winding down. The Allies are preparing to cross the Rhine River into Germany itself, the final push to end the war. The crossing point is going to be at Remagen and several other locations. The Ninth Army is going to make the main crossing, but they don't want the Germans to know where. So the Ghost Army stages Operation Viersen. They create an entirely fake buildup of forces at a different crossing point, making it look like that's where the main attack will come. They set up their inflatable equipment. They broadcast heavy radio traffic suggesting major units are assembling. Their sonic deception guys play recordings of bridge building equipment and amphibious vehicles. They even create fake supply dumps with dummy crates and equipment. The Germans fall for it completely. They move artillery and troops to defend the fake crossing point. When the real Ninth Army crosses at the actual location, German defenses there are undermanned. The crossing succeeds with far fewer casualties than expected. After the war, when German generals are interrogated, several mention the American buildup at the fake crossing site. They never realized it was inflatable tanks and sound effects. They'd redeployed real forces to counter a rubber army. By the time the war ends in May 1945, the Ghost Army has conducted 21 major battlefield deceptions. They've impersonated multiple different U.S. divisions, sometimes 2 or 3 different divisions in the same month. They've operated in France, Luxembourg, Belgium, Germany. They've been credited with saving an estimated 15,000 to 30,000 American lives by drawing German forces away from real attacks. But here's the thing, nobody knows about them. The operation is classified. When the Ghost Army soldiers return home after the war, they're forbidden from talking about what they did. They can't tell their families. They can't tell their friends. They're just regular veterans of World War II, except they carry this secret. And it stays secret for decades. The Ghost Army's existence isn't declassified until 1996 and 51 years after the war ended. Only then can the surviving members finally talk about what they did. When the story finally becomes public in the 1,990 seconds, people are amazed. News articles call it the greatest art project of the 20th century and war by theater. The surviving Ghost Army members are in their 70 seconds and 80 seconds now, and suddenly they're being interviewed, appearing on documentaries, finally able to tell their story. Bill Blass, by now a famous fashion designer, confirms that yes, he spent 1,944 to 1,945 inflating rubber tanks in France. Ellsworth Kelly, by now a celebrated artist with works in major museums, confirms he was painting fake insignia on Jeeps and designing camouflage patterns. One Ghost Army veteran described their work this way: "We weren't heroes in the traditional sense. We didn't charge machine gun nests or fly combat missions, but we used creativity and art to save lives. We painted and inflated and performed our way across Europe, and every time the Germans fell for it, that meant real American soldiers somewhere else had an easier time, faced less resistance, had a better chance of going home." The Ghost Army's equipment, the inflatable tanks, the sonic equipment, the radio gear, most of it was destroyed or scrapped after the war. The military didn't see a need to keep rubber tanks around, but a few pieces survived. Today, you can see an inflatable Sherman tank at the National World War II Museum in New Orleans. It looks ridiculous up close, obviously fake, like a parade balloon. But photographs from the 1,940 seconds, taken from a distance or from the air, show just how convincing these things were when deployed properly. The Ghost Army story also raises an interesting question about warfare. We usually think about World War II in terms of tanks, aircraft, battles, strategy, but the Ghost Army shows that deception, pure theatrical deception, could be just as important as firepower. Making the enemy think you're somewhere you're not, making them prepare for an attack that's not coming, forcing them to waste resources defending against a threat that doesn't exist, that's a force multiplier. In 2013, Congress awarded the Ghost Army the Congressional Gold Medal, one of the highest civilian honors in the United States. By then, most of the Ghost Army members had passed away. Only about 20 to 30 survivors remained to receive the medal. But it was official recognition, finally, of what they'd accomplished. The citation read, "In recognition of their unique and distinguished service during World War II, using innovative deception tactics to mislead the enemy about the strength and location of American units, thereby saving countless lives and contributing to the Allied victory." Rick Beyer, a filmmaker who made a documentary about the Ghost Army, put it this way. These men fought with inflatable tanks, tape recorders, and paintbrushes. They turned art into a weapon, and they proved that sometimes in war, the best armor is imagination. There's something almost poetic about the Ghost Army story. In a war defined by massive destruction, cities bombed to rubble, millions of casualties, the atomic bomb here was a unit that won through creation rather than destruction. They built things even if those things were fake. They used art, theater, sound design, and creativity as weapons. And maybe that's the real lesson of the Ghost Army. War isn't just about who has the most tanks or the biggest guns. Sometimes it's about who can think most creatively, who can see a different way to solve the problem. The Ghost Army looked at the challenge, we're outnumbered, how do we even the odds? And they came up with an answer nobody had really tried at this scale before. We'll make the enemy see things that aren't there. It worked because war, like theater, is partly about perception. If the enemy thinks you have 50 tanks somewhere, they'll position forces to counter those 50 tanks. It doesn't matter that the tanks are made of rubber and air. What matters is what the enemy thinks is real. The Ghost Army operated for less than 2 years, from January 1944 to May 1945. Just 1,100 men, most of them not traditional soldiers, but artists and actors and sound engineers. They performed 21 major deceptions. They impersonated entire armored divisions. They fooled German intelligence over and over again. They saved thousands of lives. And for 50 years, nobody knew they existed. Now we know. And their story stands as one of the strangest, most creative, and most successful military deception operations in history. The army that wasn't there but convinced the enemy it was. The artists who went to war with rubber tanks and won. That's the story of the Ghost Army. The soldiers who fought with imagination instead of ammunition. The unit that proves sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't what you have, but what you can make the enemy think you have.